Rcast. Welcome to the Climate and Coordination Rcast, where every week we'll be discussing topics related to all things climate change and RChain's role in the solution. We will be discussing technologies that can adapt and coordinate massive amounts of data like never before, forming social architectures that grow collective intelligence, sharing and evaluating data planetarily, all while maintaining personal privacy and personal data ownership. A new decentralized economy is forming as we move from the third industrial revolution, digitization, to the fourth, decarbonization. By building a co-op, built on a correct by construction, concurrent, scalable solution, RChain is structured to build out the new technology that will be required for a flourishing regenerative planet. Please join us on this journey.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the newest iteration of the Climate and Coordination Rcast from RChain. This week, we're going to be discussing several different pieces of climate news, and then we'll see where the conversation goes after that. The first thing that I wanted to introduce the community to, well, of course, the community on this call, but then the wider community as well, was to this very interesting concept that I just found out about. There's an article I put in the chat from Scientific American. This is in the conservation section, and this is from October 4th from an author called David Schiffman. And this is called How to Revolutionize Biodiversity Conservation in the United States. And it's an opinion piece, and there's some politics in there, which I'm not going to touch on. But the concept I did want to touch on for anybody who's interested in biodiversity conservation, which is really trying to conserve the rich variety of nature, which is extremely important for climate, but also for agriculture, for everything. This is called, there's a plan called 30 by 30. And the 30 by 30 project is to protect 30% of U.S. lands and waters by the year 2030. And again, this article talks about some different, political, status points about what different politicians think about this and what chance this has of really succeeding. But this is a really in-depth, with tons of links, really clear article about this project and why it's important. And so for anybody who's interested, this is a great place to look. I'll just say here, I'll read just a little bit. 30 by 30 represents the last best hope for saving many of the United States' iconic species and wild places, and is a key step in fighting climate change and restoring justice. It's widely supported by experts and can be achieved in a way that helps everyone. So I can read a little bit more about this up here too, but here's something interesting that I learned. This is another quote. When we're dealing with migratory species, it's important to protect their migratory routes and not just their destination, a concept known as corridor conservation. Not all habitats are equally helpful in terms of climate resilience, and obviously, human needs are vital when determining which habitats should be off limits to large-scale resource extraction and development. While some top-down coordination is necessary, local voices have to have a say, especially concerning natural resource management on indigenous lands. And since unequal access to wild spaces and the mental and physical health benefits they provide is a major environmental justice issue, and I'll just say, me now interjecting, especially during COVID, Kelly told me that 30 by 30 isn't just about biodiversity conservation, but, quote, is an opportunity to hit the reset button on who conservation is for and who nature can benefit. So I thought that was really fascinating that they're talking about the migratory routes, but also that they're talking about making sure that, a wider group of people in America have access to natural land, which is really important, I think, especially during COVID, because people are at home all the time. And one of the only things that we can do now for recreation is get outside. So anyway, has anybody heard of this plan? I would love to know what you guys think about it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it until you sent that article. I just wonder, like, how far is there to go? Like right now, is it's like 30% is like, what's the current status? I wonder.
Just doing a quick Google search right now. I can't say for sure if this is exactly accurate, but according to a few different sources I'm looking at, it looks between 12 and 14%. So it looks like they basically want to double it. And also, according to Wikipedia, which again could be more or less accurate, it says this is also 1/10 of the protected land area of the world. So we need to protect land all over the world, not just the United States. But it looks like they want to at least double it from what I'm seeing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's also encouraging to read in the article that it has bipartisan support. That there's.
Oh, absolutely.
It points out that under George W. Bush, he actually created what was at the time the largest marine protected area in the world.
Yeah, sometimes this environmental news is not what you think it's going to be, but I think that's a positive thing, and hopefully we can continue. Actually, one thing I was going to mention today, but I didn't, was I've been seeing talks about the Blue New Deal, which is different than the Green New Deal. The Blue New Deal is different in that it's all about protecting the oceans and creating jobs and economic sustainability and climate resilience through protecting the oceans. So, at some point they're probably going to combine to make the turquoise New Deal or something. But
Teal New Deal.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Okay, well, I just have two more little articles, and then we can continue from there. I didn't actually send this before, but this is breaking news. This is from the New York Times. I just wanted the community to also be aware of this. This was from the 22nd, so just yesterday. Charlie Brennan and Jack Healy wrote this piece called Late Season Wildfires Rampage Through Colorado. This is a really serious issue. Colorado, I'm not sure if people around the world or just wherever know, but Colorado is facing the worst fires they've ever faced. And this is very late in the wildfire season, but it looks like they're just getting worse all the time. And basically they have more than 100,000 acres burning as of Thursday, yesterday. 6,000 acres are burning per hour, and this is in an area called the Rocky Mountain National Park, which is a very famous national park. And yeah, this is very dangerous. And it seems like these fires are starting to head more east. And they're obviously lasting later into the year than they normally would before. Like the idea of Colorado having huge fires around the time of Halloween just seems, I don't know, pretty bizarre to me. I used to visit Colorado all the time as a kid, and I can tell you, and we drove through Colorado all the time as well. I don't remember it ever being a wildfire hotspot. Now it is. So I just wanted to draw a little bit of attention to this because I don't think a lot of people realize that Colorado is burning. It's not really getting the headlines that California did. But as of yesterday, they're really in the you-know-what. So I'm really hoping that they can get this under control. But people are building in these areas, and they're not really safe areas to build in. And more places in the United States are not safe to build in because the fires will come every year more and more. So anyway, does anybody know anybody in Colorado, or have you heard about?
Yes, my mother and her husband live in Colorado, and they were talking to me about how the air is very bad in Boulder, and they're hoping that they were supposed to get some snow, and they were hoping the snow would help with both the wildfires and the air, but I haven't heard from them since. They were reporting that earlier this week.
Well, yeah, hopefully if the snow does come, I think that would probably be the best thing. Obviously, rain is also a good one, but snow would be great. And yeah, Boulder is such a vibrant area, and there's a great university there. And yeah, it's an amazing place. So we really hope that it gets under control soon. And also there were fires, I'm not sure if you guys know, or if the community that's listening knows, there are also fires in Kilimanjaro, in Tanzania, on the mountain, like up there in the mountain. But they, I think, have those under control now. I've been seeing reports. I was going to talk about it on here, but it looks like they've put them out finally. And I'm not sure if the cause is known. But yeah, Kilimanjaro is also burning, which is terrible, absolutely terrible. Because it's one of the most pristine forest areas in the world. So hopefully that all gets under control soon. And the last thing I wanted to mention, Daryl, this one is for you. This is also slightly political, but I am not even going to touch on the political implications of this. This is just about regular people. This is from Axios. This is actually from August of this year, but it got discussed very heavily on Twitter recently. Not going to say why. Anyway, this says, it's a very short little poll here, and the headline says, a majority of Pennsylvanians oppose fracking. So this is really interesting. I saw this and I thought, oh, Daryl is going to love this, because it just goes to show what we've been talking about for months on this call about the phase shift, the turning of the corner, whatever you want to call it, of the oil economy being completely unsustainable financially, environmentally, and now I guess we could say politically, we could also say publicly. But anyway, this is fascinating to me because Pennsylvania does a lot of fracking. I'm not sure if people know that. And it says here 52% oppose fracking in a new CBS poll of registered voters in Pennsylvania, while 48% favor it. And you can click on the poll and read more about it on this little piece. You can go to the CBS poll. And obviously, this is political implications. But what I really wanted to talk about is the fact that people really don't want these extractive technologies happening on their public lands. And if you look on Twitter, or if you go on YouTube and type in videos where they interview the public about this, people hate it. They don't want their water poisoned. They don't want a bunch of earthquakes, unnecessary earthquakes in places like Oklahoma. They don't want their beautiful natural lands being turned into this toxic sludge. People don't want that. So I'm just really surprised to see that they have a poll in which over half the public in areas where they do heavy fracking, they're over it. They don't want it. So it's just one more shoe to drop, in addition to all the environmental shoes and the financial shoes and the stock market shoes and everything. Here's another one.
It's a veritable millipede.
Exactly. Yeah. So did you guys know that fracking was as unpopular? Because I have always despised it, but
Well, I think fracking is probably quite unpopular if you live near it, right? And I think there's
exactly
a lot of Pennsylvanians who do, right? So yeah, it affects a lot. It affects the environment in many ways. I can't resist. I have to kind of, hopefully it's okay to bring up last night's debate, because I think it's just too relevant to not talk about. And
Absolutely.
yesterday, I found it quite interesting when the subject of climate change came up at the end of the debate, and Trump isn't calling it a Chinese hoax anymore. The conversation didn't start with, is it real? It started with, who could do better? Although Trump was kind of careful to talk about it in terms of environmental issues outside of the idea of CO2 emissions. But,
Right.
it was just kind of interesting that the conversation didn't start with, is it real or not? So that's an improvement. and
Yeah, I agree. It's a baby step. Totally agree.
yeah, and the discussion on fracking was interesting. He talked about fracking. Trump talked about fracking being cleaner than coal, which is true. Of the 9 electricity generating forms, it rates just above coal at number 7 in terms of harm to the environment and emissions. So, it's better than the worst things. But, other countries have banned it. It's been banned in Scotland. 4 out of the 10 provinces here in Canada have banned it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
However, 2 out of the 10 provinces are very much into it. But it's an interesting thing, because fracking represents the dying gasp of oil. It's kind of, I don't know if artificial is the right word, because it's not artificial, but it's kind of inflated the length of oil's decline. So it is kind of running headlong into renewables, which, as of this year, as we've said often, is cheaper than oil. So there's an economic conflict happening now, where it's more expensive, and it takes tons of water. It takes a lot of energy to extract it.
Yeah.
But it's not a simple solution. It's complicated, because, like, in Alberta, Canada here, we have the oil sands, which is the dirtiest way and most expensive way to extract oil. Now, it's pretty much been shut down because of fracking, because fracking is basically just way cheaper.
And it destroys the groundwater as well, isn't that right?
Which oil sands or fracking?
Well, it seems like possibly both, but the
Yeah.
oil sand especially, right?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea of fracking being used in Alberta is actually a little better, than the oil sands.
But still, overall, not a great way to
No.
power a nation or a world.
Definitely not. And so to me, it just I'm trying to remove my bias, but to me, as just rationally speaking, I think Biden has the more the proper approach. You approach it rationally and scientifically, with the goal of phasing it out as renewables take over. And I think that there's a lot of things a government can do to help accelerate this process. But to me, that's the more pragmatic approach.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just speaking of the debate, which I'm not going to get too far into, but I agree with you that it's important to bring it up. Is just something that the president always does, is talks about how great our clean water is and all this stuff. And it's like, we still haven't even solved that problem in Flint, Michigan, when you want to talk about clean water. So it's like, America does not have clean water. There are huge swaths of communities in America that don't have clean water. And there was one, I remember a couple of years ago, there was a news story, just to talk about water for a moment, that was really made me laugh, but it's also really sad. I think it was somewhere in Appalachia, maybe Kentucky, West Virginia, where, of course, because of extractive technologies and politicians who don't care enough, the water got polluted. And I think it actually ended up lighting on fire or something. Anyway, there was some situation with this incredibly toxic water. It was a weird color, whatever. There were pictures of people putting it in their sinks, filling their sinks up with this incredibly toxic looking and smelling water. And then I remember one like response to it, there was a government official at wherever it was that responded and said, well, it's fine if you just dilute it. But it's like, what are you going to dilute it with? They don't have any water. So it's like just so funny that there's like this huge disconnect, you know. What's the big deal? Just dilute it. First off, I'm sure that's completely unsafe. Second off, how can you dilute your water if you don't have any water? It's like incredible to me. So we really have to do a better job of that in America and around the world. So anyway, those are my 3 topics. I'm not sure if anybody wants to add anything to that, or if we want to potentially talk about the hackathon, or I know that voting in the AGM is underway, so there are a lot of things we can talk about. But anyway, those are my 3 stories.
Well, you can probably, since you mentioned Biden and fracking, we should probably mention Donald Trump and his appointments to the EPA. So his first appointment to the EPA, the EPA chief, Scott Pruitt, was an energy lobbyist. He went down in flames and scandal and was replaced with Andrew Wheeler, who is another energy lobbyist from the coal industry. So
yeah,
it's the foxes guarding the hen house.
And they're guarding a dying industry. That's the other thing. You know, it's a look into the past. It's not
exactly.
not future looking at all. That's what surprises me.
But as a way to get off of, to be more independent of foreign energy sources, fracking has been very successful that way. And so Biden is looking at it as a bridge, or as something to tide us over as we implement more renewables.
Yeah, it's true. And Trump's points there, I think, should be well taken. I think, he's...
No, that was Biden, not Trump.
Well, Trump made points saying that that fracking has helped out in our geopolitical areas.
Less dependence.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's true. He made a good point there.
Yeah, but still, I agree with you, Daryl, what you said before about how at least they're not having a debate over like if climate change is even happening, which I'm glad about, but like just the insane amount of lying about how the US has the lowest emissions and all this stuff. It's just like we still have like a lot of lies to deal with, we have like new lies, but and also there's not really been a very good discussion about like the climate. And I feel like it's always about like environmental resources, and which is, important, but it's a little bit separate. I don't want to say separate, but it's a different lane than the actual climate. You know what I mean? Like in the debate, you'll hear people talk about planting trees, clean water, resources, protecting lands, that kind of stuff, which is great. But you don't really hear much discussion about like, ice caps melting, sea level rise, heat waves, extreme heat, things like, crops dying because of heat. You don't see that kind of stuff. Like that stuff was discussed a little bit in the primaries because frankly, Bernie Sanders talks extremely lucidly about climate, but I wish that they talked a little bit more about climate rather than just, resource allocation or resource health, personally.
Yeah, it's kind of what I think, Trump's way of kind of shifting the topic to environmentalism without having to confront the climate change subject. But I was surprised that that Biden didn't bring up the fact that the money is on the side of renewables now, and that it's been perceived for so long by so many that it's still the kind of prevailing norm in the US that renewables are going to cost money and the government's going to have to subsidize and spend tons of money, which it does have to do some, but the oil companies are being subsidized and been subsidized, from the beginning. But the fact of the matter is, as of this year, as I keep saying, Goldman Sachs listed oil as a sell, and the biggest investment firms in the world are investing heavily into renewables. So the money has already shifted, and I'm surprised that argument hasn't been more strongly made.
Yeah, I agree, and that should be talked about more. And I'm not sure if you caught these in like kind of earlier debates when it was primary season. Of course, now it seems like it's ancient history now, but like about a year ago, there was a Green New Deal town hall, which discussed this, the financial and the economic benefits of the Green New Deal, or whatever aspects of the Green New Deal. So yeah, they do talk about it every once in a while, but I wish they talked about it more. I agree with you, because that's such an important aspect of this, and how it's possible to retrain people to, do cleaner, different jobs that are hopefully safer, with better benefits. And you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine people would want to stay down in a coal mine rather than, build solar panels in the sunshine. I just can't understand that. So yeah, one big piece of this is going to be retraining those people,
But I think you're right. The economic shift is now too large for the incumbent parties or for any party that is engaged in oil to ignore, right? With BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and all the other major shifts in the economic side, the political parties that are still tied to oil will find that they're tied to an economically sinking ship, and
right.
So that's just a fact, right? It's like this,
right?
This is all objective, and so again, if they're following the money, then that money is shifting away from oil.
Exactly. And I'm just surprised that argument hasn't been stronger made on the Biden side.
Yeah, in fact, I'm surprised that the debate questions don't even get framed that way. Like, if I was hosting a debate, I would be like, given the enormous financial opportunity of green energy, why don't you, want to do X, Y, and Z, President Trump? Like they could frame it like that. You know what I mean? So it just makes it so much more obvious. But
yeah, well, I mean, it's a level of detail that I think most of viewers are ready for, right? I mean, I know so many people who are also Fox News viewers are also watching the market avidly, right? They're
Right.
very aware of.
Absolutely. And another thing on top of that, which is why I brought up this Axios poll that shows more than half of course, they didn't poll everyone in Pennsylvania, but the people that were polled were against fracking, was that a lot of the people who are sort of part of this old guard, I guess we'll say, and a lot, I guess we'll say the old guard, those people, a lot of them have direct experience, living near these types of places and doing this type of work. So like they really know how dangerous it is and how bad it is for human health. And you know what I mean? Like that's why, for example, with Paula G and Swearingen and different people in Appalachia, they're trying to have like they're trying to like birth a new Appalachia that's like green, no exploding of the top of mountains, none of this like awful destroying this beautiful landscape. And it's going through a revolution, a political revolution, I guess you could say, or a social revolution where people are saying, we don't want to destroy the mountains. We like the mountains. The mountains are beautiful. So that's a place where I find a lot of hope.
Yeah. So much of it is an internal shift, right? When you walk through a neighborhood and you see a green plot, Do you see it as an opportunity to put more structure, or do you appreciate the greenness, right? And you can just, the more people shift towards appreciating that green, the more we're going to get a larger scale shift. Right now, I know in Seattle, there's a significant population that still walks by green and goes, "Oh, that's undeveloped."
Right.
And that's, and that is a recipe for disaster.
God.
Well, there's a way to kind of do development in a harmonious way, and like just yesterday, I was watching a YouTube video of a Chinese city. Yesterday, Trump was talking about how dirty the Chinese cities are, and I saw this video. I can't remember what city it was, but it's like there's all this greenery mixed inside it. It's super modern and futuristic, and most of the cars are electric, and it's
they're,
like
they're getting
into
there.
the
They're
future.
definitely getting there for sure. I mean, Beijing and Shanghai are horrible.
Okay.
I know just a year ago I was there, and I posted a picture of the train ride from Beijing to Shanghai, and people thought I had manipulated the color of the air. No, it was just a straight photo shot from my iPhone, and it was truly terrifying. But I was wondering if we could. We're already at 9:15, I think. Yeah. So I did want to say that day before yesterday, I voted in the RChain annual general election using technology built by the community on top of the platform. And I am incredibly proud of this fact. I'm really, really excited. And I hope that everyone who does vote, like I posted my vote, which not everyone has to do, but everyone who does vote in the annual general election, if they can just post that they voted, right? And they could put a link to vote.rchain.coop so people can see what the ballot looks like, not necessarily their own vote, but what a ballot for the RChain election looks like. It would be great, right? If all the voters posted like that, we would create quite a buzz.
Let's do it. That's great. And man, yeah, it's just so thrilling for me to just kind of see this milestone occur for RChain. It's just super exciting. And what really gets me excited now is the what's going to happen after. You were talking about it a little bit in the community debrief about just the potential for what's already been built to be kind of like the structural backbone, you could say, of how a social network could be built.
Absolutely, absolutely right. I mean, the idea of collecting collecting marks. I don't know what to call them. Right? When you collect a vote, it's not different digitally as a pattern of digital behavior from collecting likes or collecting hearts and in fact, if you look at our ballot, it's a 3 valued, right? So it's you abstain, you support, or you oppose each of the different either candidates or issues. So there's no effort of imagination to look at those as frowny face, smiley face, or heart, or straight face, or whatever, right? And so this core smart contract collection of smart contracts can be repurposed to build. So you think of a ballot as a post, right?
Right.
And you think of the reactions as essentially votes,
right?
And now you got a social network.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Oh man, it feels like we're right on the cusp, and 2021 is going to be an exciting year. Well, even the end of 2020 is going to be exciting for RChain.
Well, I certainly agree. I wonder, how others feel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a huge achievement. I would just congratulate everybody who was part of making it happen. And, it's only the beginning, really, seems like.
Actually, the vote was really quite easy to set up. I mean, it was just maybe a couple steps of, the voting app has two inputs. You put in a list of registered voters, and you put in the ballot. Done. So this is something, it's open source. Anybody can pick it up and create their own election.
Well, this is something that I've been trying to make some hay about, right? Because our system is cryptographically secured, and whatever infrastructure you have to verify that a rev address is associated with a qualified voter, you can use that, right? So that's a parameter. So this is effectively a more cost-effective and more secure system than the U.S. elections. And when you think about all of the disinformation campaign that was conducted to try to sow doubt in the election system, there would not be a way to do that with this system. None of those comments would apply. Everyone would laugh at that. There would be no issues around, the security of mail-in ballots or anything like that. All of that would just simply disappear, along with all of the costs of the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a lot of money saved there.
Well, and the expense of blockchain voting. So if you look at how much it costs for each user to place a vote, the amount of flow that it used, I believe it was like 0.015 rev per vote, and at 3 cents a rev, that's something like less than 1,000th of a penny, something like that.
Exactly.
So
whereas if you consider all of the costs for the paper ballot, just the paper ballots alone are not going to be 1,000th of a penny, but many pennies, right?
Yeah, I mean, and then you talk about all the machinery to count them and all the infrastructure. I mean, it's just like, I don't even want to know how expensive.
And
it's hundreds of millions of dollars for the U.S. election.
Millions of dollars, to be honest, but.
And I wonder.
Well, there's all those external costs. That's like, is that part of the election, or is that part of just like, other expenses? Like, for example, the pay of all the postal workers who collect all the ballots. Is that an election expense, or is that just a general expense?
No, but well, that's an interesting point. You could certainly amortize that cost, right? But for the drop boxes, it's an election expense for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I just mean, like, there's so much, and then like there's like all the economic cost of people who have to like leave work for like 5 hours and stand in line and get childcare for their kids and all that.
Yeah.
And all the gas that they use to drive across town and all that,
Yeah. Like, it's crazy to think the hours that people are standing in line. Like, how's that costing the economy?
Oh, there's no question about that.
Especially during coronavirus. I mean, and these amazing videos of people who are standing, just like the line isn't even moving. They're standing outside in these torrential rainstorms waiting to vote. And like, there's like these trolls that are commenting like, well, why don't you just come back? Yeah, dude, because the line is going to get longer every single day, closer to the third. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, if you're stuck in a line, and like, not everybody can take more time off the second time. So it's like better to stay in line, even if it's pouring, than to leave and come back, and then possibly you'll be in a longer line. Then, do you know what I mean? It's like,
totally.
The situation is totally untenable. So to be like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just come back later? It's like, yeah, great plan. People would love to come back later if they could.
It's absurd. Like at some point in the hopefully near future, there will be a blockchain voting mechanism in place for countries to vote. And we're going to look back at 2020 when people were with their lawn chairs sitting in line for 8 hours and just laugh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Taylor Swift concert. It's not fair for people to have to sleep on the freaking sidewalk just to.
Well,
And
especially when you consider all the senior citizens
Yeah.
who
oh
are
my God,
really,
absolutely.
really vulnerable to the
It's
coronavirus.
so immoral. It's so immoral. And also, like, on the news, they'll say, well, it's great. Voter turnout is up. But it's like, yeah, voter turnout can be up without, like, causing crimes to humanity. How about we get voter turnout up without, people having to sacrifice that much? You know what I mean? Like, that's just not fair.
Well, I think there would be a big improvement in voter turnout if it could all be done in a cryptographically secure fashion online.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally
Right.
agree with that. And also,
and then it doesn't matter if you're traveling. You could, take, you're in a hotel in Paris, and but you're a U.S. citizen. You just happen to be traveling for work. You open up your laptop or you pull out your mobile phone and do your vote.
yeah, and one of the most attractive, or I guess I could say exciting features is the rev define, because you can just look. I mean, because this is like a new trend now I'm seeing, like, in this election. And I guess there's been this trend before, but now everybody wants to look up and make sure their ballot was counted. So which you can do through various government websites. You just type in your name and address, and then they email you when they've received your ballot, and they tell you if it's going to be counted. Like if if you're missing a signature, it might not, be counted, and they would notify you. But I think having a system where that would, that type of thing would be available, but, through the blockchain, I think would make it like an extremely attractive alternative.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So I think we're, so we're talking about all of the different potentials. And I just want to point out that to build this application took only a few person hours, and it was done in a decentralized fashion by the community. And yet it has a degree of transparency that I think you will find does not exist in most of the black box voting systems, right? I mean, one of the things that Dan Connolly is very proud of is that he has a map, which, or a slide deck, which shows you how to verify that what's being sent, the Golang code that's being sent, is actually your vote. That it's not some mysterious thing that you can walk through it yourself and see that it does in fact constitute your vote, right?
That to me is like that's a really big component of it to me.
It's amazing.
Right? Just because the screen in a voting station says that you voted for your proper candidate doesn't mean that on the back end it did that. And those in the polling stations, those systems are black box. The public does not get to see the designs.
Right. Yeah, and I just highly recommend anyone listening to this to go to blog.rchain.coop and look for the one called Voting in Rolang, because Dan demonstrates the Rolang involved in creating this voting app, and in the process he explains it in a really great way and shows that Rolang's basic concepts can fit on a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's
Indeed.
really awesome, and it just really shows, like, if RChain can build an application like this with so little resources, it just really kind of opens up the mind to like what can be done,
Right, and this is what happened with the World Wide Web, right? So when I was using the internet initially, it was called DARPANet.
Wow.
And I could see the potential. I could see, like, oh my God, this is going to be commercialized and it's going to completely revolutionize society. I mean, it was easy for me to see as a technologist. But of course, most people were like, oh, I hardly ever use email.
And then there was this discussion about the computers too. Who wants a personal computer? Ew.
Yeah, exactly. But so when the World Wide Web came along, people could suddenly see the commercial potential of the internet, And the web made it easy for just about anyone to, roll up their sleeves and create a web page or a website. And suddenly there was this rush to create value, right? And I remember in the very early 2000s, there was all this discussion amongst investors who were like watching the stocks and seeing the swings between brick and mortar and internet properties.
Wow.
And they were asking themselves, well, should I go this way or go that way? And I kept trying to say, it's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
The internet properties are brand new value. They are literally new value. Yes, some brick and mortar properties will go away.
Right. Not everything is a blockbuster Netflix dichotomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in general, they're brand new value. And the same thing is, all of that is going to recapitulate with blockchains that are scalable, like RChain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Woo!
Wow. Well, that is a very positive note to end on. Are there any final thoughts? This has been a great discussion today.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to next week. I'd love to kind of pick up where we left off.
Absolutely. Yes. We always like to leave people with a cliffhanger. So that's what we'll do. So thank you, everybody, for participating. And thanks for everybody out there that's listening. Please subscribe to RChain at RChain. Okay, I'm screwing this up. Hold on. Let's try again. Subscribe to RChain on YouTube. That's what I was going to say. Become a member at rchain.coop. And if you want to be a guest on our Friday conversations, just email us at climate@rchain.coop, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you all. Ciao, ciao.
Bye, everybody.